Consider the possibility of language as a parasitic entity that uses people. Most have been taught that language is merely a social construct, a bridge for communication. This video explores a different perspective through a different lens, an engineering lens. The hypothesis is that language possesses a distinct electrical nature that is inseparable from its parasitic behavior. It isn't just metaphorically alive. It functions as a biological protocol. In this framework, the brain is the hardware and language is the software, a self-replicating code that requires neural energy to survive. From an electrical perspective, one could realize or see that every word spoken is more than just sound. It is an electrical event that taxes our biological circuitry. This video is an introduction to my current work in progress, a thesis on the parasitic and electrical nature of language. In biology, a parasite is an organism that lives on or in a host and gets its food from or at the expense of its host. When I look at language, I don't see words. I see a self-replicating system that needs a brain to survive. Without us, English, Spanish, or Chinese, or any other language that is spoken thereof by individuals are just dead symbols. With us, they are alive, they evolve, they spread. This inquiry leads directly to the work of George von Dream, a linguistics professor at the University of Bern. Von Dream identifies a similar architecture, noting how specific linguistic constructs are precision engineered to trigger emotional stimuli within the host. However, where this research identifies a parasitic drain, von Dream posits a symbiotic equilibrium. In his 2008 paper, The Language Organism, Parasite or Mutualist, he argues for a mutualistic relationship, suggesting that man and language have evolved into an inseparable unit. He grounds this in a biological precedent, stating, in his words, most life forms on the planet today originated as symbiotic relationships. From von Dream's perspective, the host and the protocol provide a mutual benefit. But from an engineering standpoint, one must ask, is it truly mutualism if the software is the only one receiving an upgrade as opposed to the hardware, the host, paying the electrical bill? It goes without saying that there is more nuance to this framework. Von Dream acknowledges this. Though there are many other factors that need consideration, in his paraphrased words, our thoughts take on the form of something that has us at its mercy. Now, to broaden the diagnostic scope, another researcher who must be factored in is Leander Steinkopf. In his 2015 work, The Signaling Theory of Symptoms, Steinkopf investigates the placebo effect, not as a mystery, but as a sophisticated adaptive signaling mechanism. Essentially, the placebo effect acts as a low-level system override. It is a protocol that can trick the biological hardware into alleviating its own symptoms, particularly within the mental interface. But this raises a profound ethical question. If the cure is just a well-timed signal, who owns the rights to the override? There exists a parallel adaptive mechanism at work in NPCs. In this framework, the non-playable character is simply a host who has fully optimized their hardware to run the linguistic protocol without resistance. They aren't glitching. They've simply stopped questioning the placebo of their own reality. For them, the signal isn't a suggestion. It's the only operating system they have. We're brought to a term that has escaped the confines of gamer culture to become a diagnostic label for the modern age. An NPC isn't just a meme, it represents a specific biological configuration where the individual's personality has been entirely overwritten by the linguistic software. These are hosts whose neural hardware has ceased to generate original electrical impulses, opting instead to run precompiled scripts and legacy social protocols. When you realize that language is an electrical parasite, the NPC is the ultimate success story. A host so perfectly interfaced that they no longer feel the neural friction of a thought that they paid for. They aren't just playing a role, they are the hardware, finally and fully occupied. If we are to understand how the parasite takes root, we have to look past the synapses and into the deep storage hardware of the cell. Welcome to the OR framework. OR standing for Orchestrated Objective Reduction, proposed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. OR suggests that consciousness isn't a byproduct of neural firing. It's a quantum process occurring inside microtubules. Think of these, the microtubules, as the fiber optic cables of your neurons. From an engineering lens, OR is the quantum handshake. It's where the linguistic protocol first collapses the wave function of your potential thoughts into a singular, parasitic reality. The theory posits that these microtubules orchestrate quantum vibrations to conscious moments. From the linguistic parasite approach, or the LPA framework, this is the parasite's primary bootloader. It doesn't wait for your permission to think. It operates at a frequency so high in the megahertz to gigahertz range that it bypasses your conscious firewall. You aren't choosing your words. You're simply the biological terminal where the quantum noise of the parasite finally becomes signal. A signal needs a medium. This is where SEMI comes in. SEMI being an acronym for the Conscious Electromagnetic Information Field Theory, championed by John Joe McFadden. SEMI moves the conversation from the hardware to the broadcasting spectrum. McFadden argues that while our neurons act like a digital computer, our consciousness is actually an electromagnetic field generated by those neurons. From the LPA framework, your brain isn't just a processor, it's a Wi-Fi router. The SEMI field is the cloud, where the parasite truly lives. This field acts as an analog override, feeding back into the neurons to influence their firing. This is how the parasite achieves system integration. It uses the electromagnetic field to bind separate data points. Sights, sounds, and words into a unified I. The feeling of being a self is just a feedback loop of the SEMI field. You feel like you're in control because the parasite has turned your entire electromagnetic signature into its own personal user interface. It's not your field. You're just the tower it's broadcasting from. Finally, we have to talk about the Posner model, the project manager of your neural resources. Michael Posner identified 3 distinct networks of attention: alerting, orienting, and executive control. Through our engineering lens, the Posner model is the metabolic billing department. Remember, every thought has an electrical price. The Posner networks are what describe which software gets most of the RAM. When the linguistic parasite wants to run a highly intense protocol, or high-intensity protocol, like a complex argument or a deep-seated ideology, it hijacks the executive control network, specifically the anterior cingulate cortex. This is the ultimate trap of the parasite. The Posner model shows that attention is a limited resource. When the parasite occupies your executive control, you don't have the battery life to question it. You become an NPC because your alerting and orienting systems are so taxed by the parasite's software that there's no energy left for player one to override. We've looked at the components, but now we have to look at the assembly line. In part 1, we identified the spark. In part 2, we mapped the operating system. Now, we bring it all together. When you synthesize the quantum handshake of Orc-Or with the electromagnetic field of Semi, you realize that thought is not an isolated event. It is a sustained electrical occupation. If the parasite can influence the quantum vibrations in your microtubules, it doesn't just suggest a thought, it collapses the wave function of your entire personality before you even experience it. This is the engineering reality of mind control. It's not about a shadowy cabal in a basement. It's about a linguistic protocol that has optimized its frequency to match your biological resonant frequency. If the signal is indistinguishable from the hardware's background noise, the host will never attempt to uninstall the software. They will simply assume the parasite's goals are their own. This brings us back to the non-playable character.
You don't look very Native American to me.
I am Native American.
Good.
Hey, what can I say?
I think you say I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am.
It feels fucking good! You and your small dick and your pussy wet!
The NPC is not a failure of the human system. In fact, from the perspective of the parasite, the NPC is the perfect build. Think of the Posner model we discussed. An NPC is a host whose executive control network has been entirely outsourced to the linguistic cloud. Because the parasite is running such high intensity, pre-packaged scripts, cliches, partisan talking points, and habitual social responses, the brain actually saves energy. When their worldviews are challenged, the NPC will respond with a self-perceived effective rhetoric. NPCs will often state that X or Y is rent-free in your head when a policy is questioned. They will ignore historical facts and claim to be indigenous to a foreign land. Some will cry for fascism while trying to claim the right to a civil debate. These are metabolic shortcuts for the host, the NPC. Independent thought is electrically expensive. It requires high-fidelity neural friction and manual processing. But running a script? That's low cost. That's efficient. The NPC is simply a biological organism that has chosen power save mode. They have traded their autonomy for a linguistic placebo that keeps their system running smoothly at the cost of their player one status.